It's been several months since my wife and I moved to a new house outside the city, where residential houses with huge yards were situated on one street at some distance from each other, giving a sense of seclusion. However, I felt that something was already different. Before this, we had lived in the city for over 20 years, like everyone, working, raising a wonderful son. And when it was time for him to pursue his own path, we left our old house to him and bought ourselves a small but cozy house where we could spend our old age and live out the rest of our years. Though Elsa and I weren't that old yet, we preferred to leave the city bustle and were now settling into our new home. At first, I didn't feel much discomfort, attributing everything to the abrupt change in surroundings, but as time passed, the sense of unease only grew. Elsa herself began to change gradually. Sometimes she'd come back from neighbors she quickly befriended, chatting incessantly, while other times she'd be quiet, lost in thought, pondering something important. I would occasionally try to engage her in conversation, trying to find out what she was so focused on, but she always tried to evade my questions, making up various excuses. I started to think that leaving our old life behind might have been a mistake, but she insisted she enjoyed it here and just needed time to adjust. Meanwhile, I hadn't entirely quit my job and continued to commute to the office, although most of my work was done remotely from home. Elsa, on the other hand, started baking at home, mostly supplying the local shop and occasionally treating the neighbors. We had no idea she had such a talent before we moved. Yes, she cooked wonderfully, but she wasn't particularly interested in confectionery. Now, with plenty of free time, Elsa immersed herself in it and even came up with new recipes. Her vanilla pastries were the most delicious, at least to me. One day, I came home at the end of a usual workday and noticed her lying on the couch, eyes closed, probably asleep, unaware of my approach and sitting down beside her. When I placed my hand on hers, she woke up and seemed a bit flustered. "What? What's wrong?" she asked in a slightly drowsy voice. "Nothing. You just fell asleep. Everything's fine. How are you feeling?" "Fine. Just so much to do. Samantha asked me to bake a few pies for her. Her little son's birthday is in 2 days. I have to." Elsa got up from the couch, intending to head back to the kitchen, but I took her hand and asked her to sit with me for a while. "You'll manage. Lately, you've been doing this too much." "Take care of yourself," I said. "Oh, don't start. I just like doing this. What else is there to do in my free time? Besides, I even get paid for it, so it's fine." Elsa eventually got up and went back to the kitchen, and soon I heard the clattering of pots and bowls again. I could see she enjoyed it, but I also noticed she looked tired at times, and I genuinely worried about her. Yet, she was firm in her stance, saying she was fine. While Elsa was busy in the kitchen, I decided to visit her neighbor with whom I had developed a close relationship by this time. He was a good mechanic, and I wanted to ask him to check my car because I noticed some knocking lately. "Not busy, Jack?" I greeted. "No, come in, I just got back. Beer?" he kindly offered. But I declined and briefly explained the reason for my visit. He replied he'd definitely look at the car just a bit later. "You see, my wife fell ill. She's been lying in bed almost without strength for 2 days now. I'm worried about her. And in the evening, my daughter and grandson are supposed to come, so I don't know if I'll manage today." "Poor thing. What's wrong with her? Have you been to the hospital?" I asked. "Yes. The doctor said she has a weak heart, but don't worry too much. She's much better after the attack, just still weak." I genuinely felt sorry for the trouble my neighbor faced, so I didn't linger any longer. Wishing his wife a speedy recovery, I returned home and decided to share the news with my wife. "Yeah, I heard." "That's unfortunate," she said. "Heard? And you didn't tell me anything?" I was surprised, but you were so engrossed in your project that you hardly noticed anything around you. I didn't want to bother you. Besides, it's not our affair. They'll sort it out, I guess. It seemed a bit odd to me that Elsa reacted so callously to the event. After all, we knew the neighbors quite well. Although we didn't meet every day, Elsa used to be more empathetic before. I couldn't even imagine when and why she began changing. We chatted a bit more with my wife, and then she asked me to leave her alone as she had some things to attend to. The next day, I didn't have to go to the city, so I allowed myself an extra hour of sleep in the morning. After waking up and having breakfast, I planned to visit Jack to inquire about his wife's health. But before I could step out, he showed up at my door, ready to check my car. I lent him to the garage, and we started conversing. However, Jack wasn't particularly forthcoming. His responses were short and somewhat evasive. I thought he simply didn't want me around, so I dropped the subject and invited him for lunch after the repair. Elsa won't mind, I added. She was planning to make a meat ruled in the morning. Maybe you could take some with you later. You'll take it to your wife. It might help her feel better. You know, I'm glad you invited me, but I'll pass, Jack replied, wiping his hands with a rag after finishing the work. You shouldn't worry about us. Besides, my daughter and grandson are already here. I should go. You take care of your wife. Jack left, and his tone seemed a bit harsh, but I didn't blame him, understanding his state of mind. When the car was ready, I remembered I wanted to go to the store to buy some tools and groceries. That's why I decided to utilize my day off. As I prepared to leave, I informed my wife and asked if she needed anything else. Elsa replied that we had everything necessary for now. The only thing she asked for was more vanilla. I chose a store on the outskirts to shop, avoiding driving all around the city and wasting time at traffic lights. Moreover, the shopkeeper there was an acquaintance of mine. Arriving there, I immediately started searching for what I needed on the shelves. When my basket was filled, I approached the counter. "Hey, Sam, it's been a while since you visited us." Matt greeted us and he began to scan the goods. "Yeah, been a bit busy. I see you've got more goods in stock." "Well, you know, my brother was planning to expand. He's thinking of adding another section. By the way, there'll be pastries, too. Heard your wife bakes well. If you want, I can talk to my brother so she can sell her stuff here." His offer seemed quite generous, and I understood that his brother, the store owner, would likely agree. But it would mean Elsa would have to do more baking, and I didn't want her to tire herself out. "I don't know, Matt. I think she's already busy enough. She spends the whole day in the kitchen, but I suppose she still manages to take some time off. Saw her the day before yesterday. She was passing by with some guy, maybe a customer, but she looked pretty relaxed. Who did you see her with?" His words now bothered me because my wife hadn't mentioned going anywhere, and I was curious about who she might have been with and why. I don't know him, or rather, I didn't recognize him. I guess maybe a client or just someone giving her a ride. Matt realized he might have said too much and tried to dodge the subject. I thanked him and headed home. I couldn't shake off the thought of why Elsa was with another man, given she had her own car. And more importantly, who was this man? As I drove home for some reason, this thought firmly planted itself in my head, and I couldn't think of anything else. Although, on the other hand, there didn't seem to be anything wrong with it, but Elsa had hidden it from me, and I felt the need to find out why. Upon reaching home, I immediately went to look for her, but Elsa wasn't there, and not knowing where she could be, I decided to call her. She didn't answer right away, but from her voice I could tell she was in a rather cheerful mood. So I asked when she'd be home. I didn't want to discuss the worrying topic over the phone. I wanted to see her eyes when she answered. Elsa told me that she went to Samantha's and would be home soon. I was impatient, so I decided to inspect my wife's desk to pass the time. I didn't even know why I snooped around, but something inside me stirred up jealousy, though I probably tried to convince myself otherwise. I hoped that at this stage in her lives, Elsa wouldn't dare anything like that. In her younger years, there was jealousy and love, but at least I was sure she didn't have any affair on the side. As I rummaged through the desk's odds and ends, my wife returned and I went to meet her. After a few brief phrases, I asked her where she had been the day before yesterday. "What's up? Someone that killed?" she replied. "I don't understand. What does that have to do with this?" "Well, you're asking if you're trying to figure out my alibi," she continued with a smirk. "Don't be insolent to me here. Answer when I ask." I even took a step toward her, increasingly realizing she was definitely hiding something from me. "Oh, come on, cut it out. I was at home. Maybe I went out somewhere. I can't remember now. You know I sometimes visit the neighbors, and what's happened that you're interrogating me like this? Tell me who you were with and where you went the day before yesterday." I couldn't hold back, raising my tone. "Oh, about that?" Elsa glanced down embarrassedly, then looked at me with a slightly narrow gaze. "Well, I went to town. One of the neighbors was going there, so I asked for a ride. Save some gas, too. I knew she was feeding me a line, and it made me even more irritated. The feeling of jealousy wouldn't leave me, but for a moment I began to doubt what I wanted at that moment to know the truth, whatever it might be. or to believe her lies and just think she was preparing some surprise for me. But I didn't want to remain a fool, and the desire to know the truth prevailed. Since when are you interested in saving gas? Answer. Who are you with? What are you hiding from me? My jealousy started turning into anger, and I grabbed my wife's hand so she wouldn't try to escape. Damn it, Sam, let go. It hurts. Have you completely lost your mind? She began a shout. I pulled my wife closer to me, gripping her hand even tighter, then used my other hand to hold her chin, so her face was turned towards me, and I looked into her eyes intently. I've known you for many years. I know when you're lying to me. So tell me, who were you with the day before yesterday? I was with Jack. Are you satisfied now? Let go. She tried to break free, but I still held on to her. Why? I asked. We just went to town. Needed to buy some things. It's more fun together. Seriously, at this age, you're getting jealous? Oh, right. So that's why you're so worked up. Is it okay that he's married? Idiot. Let me go. She pulled harder and I released her. Her explanation seemed quite logical, but I still felt there was something more behind it. But also was unlikely to confess to me. I understood that much. Who would want to openly admit infidelity to their husband? So I decided to go straight to Jack and talk to him. Honestly, I wanted to punch him right away so he wouldn't wander around with my wife while I was at work. But I restrained myself and decided to try talking to him first, hoping he might somehow reveal himself. When I got to his place, I knocked on the door, but he didn't answer. Instead, his daughter stood before me and asked what I wanted. I said I came to see Jack, but she replied that he wasn't there yet, but he should be coming soon and even offered me to come in and wait for him. While waiting, I asked her how her mother was feeling. Oh, don't ask. Such a sudden attack. I don't even know why it happened. She's always been so healthy, you know that. She's asleep now, but she's better, Lisa replied. We talked for a few minutes before Jack returned. I noticed that he didn't look worried at all, but rather a little cheerful. But when he saw me, he immediately changed his expression and asked what I wanted. Lisa realized from her looks that it was time for her to leave and left the living room. I, on the other hand, just said hello first and made small talk about the sweets my wife was making and told him that she wanted to donate them to another store. Really? And she never said anything about that? He replied, unsuspecting. And what about you? You talked to her that often, and then noticing Jack's puzzled look, I continued. You were seen and telling the other day, by the way. Can you tell me what you were doing there together? Jack realized what I was getting at and started to tell me that he had a lot of urgent things to do and that he didn't have time to talk, trying to get me out of the way. But I found his behavior rather questionable, so I decided to continue the conversation in a different way. The fact that these two wanted to make a fool out of me hit me so hard that I couldn't hold back anymore. Rushing at Jack, I grabbed him by the collar and pressed him against the wall. I was sure that threats would help me get the truth out of him, that he would spill it. I even directly asked him if he had an affair with my wife. But Jack stood firm, accusing me of madness and insanity as well. Several times I pushed them against the wall, but it didn't help. Then, fueled by anger, I made a motion to strike him. But Lisa stopped me. She heard the commotion and decided to check what was happening. She started yelling at me to leave their house, threatening to call the police. I didn't want to end up behind bars, so I let go of Jack. As I left, he shouted after me, calling me a complete idiot and warning that he wouldn't let this go so easily. I returned home thoroughly disappointed and now utterly convinced that these two were hiding something from me. Yet I couldn't prove it. I started contemplating how to do it. My wife noticed my bad mood upon my return and decided to interrogate me herself. This just infuriated me, and we had a big argument. Even in the midst of the argument, Elsa tried to hide her extramarital relationship, only slipping up once, mentioning that I paid less attention to her as a woman and she sometimes felt lonely. But then she managed to wriggle out of it. It ended with me just leaving the house and going to a bar to drink and calm my emotions. I knew if I stayed in, the argument continued. I might not have been able to control myself and could have ended up hitting my wife. As I sat with a drink, I tried to understand her words about lacking male attention. We weren't young anymore to play love games. I always believed that the passion usually fades in the first years of marriage, leaving attachment, respect, and loyalty. But Elsa seemed to have a different opinion. In all those years, I never saw that in her, and she never hinted at it. I simply thought she had outgrown that. Seems like I was wrong. However, besides this, I also contemplated how to catch them red-handed and then punish them for their infidelity. Numerous ideas crossed my mind, from simple surveillance to installing hidden cameras or hiring a private investigator, but I assumed that it might not yield results since they knew I suspected something and now they'd be more cautious. Also, this strange illness of Jack's wife. It was odd, but it stuck in my mind and wouldn't leave. Lisa was also worried about her mother's health, so I decided to talk to her, hoping for understanding and support. Although I suspected that once we touched upon her father, she might just tell me off. I called their home phone into my luck. She picked up. I suggested meeting, hinting that the conversation was very serious and necessary, but she replied that Jack had gone to the auto shop and she had no one to leave her son with, so I offered her my wife's help, but asked her not to disclose my involvement. My request seemed odd to Lisa, but she agreed. We met at a cafe on the outskirts of town, usually with few visitors at that time. When she came in, she immediately asked what games I was playing and that she didn't want to get involved in our intrigues. But I asked her to listen first and honestly said that she might not like it, but her help could answer many questions. Yes, initially I bluffed a bit, but I had to do it to achieve my goal. I started the conversation vaguely, but when I got to the point, Lisa, as expected, just got angry. "How dare you even think such a thing?" She replied angrily. "If you suspect your wife of something, don't drag my father into it. He always loved Mom, always. They were soulmates. And then you, city folks, show up. Are you bored? How could you even think that way? But consider everything. Put all the circumstances together. Do you really believe your mom fell ill just like that?" I didn't know why I said that at first, but I couldn't back down and I started believing in that version. "You say the doctors diagnosed her with a stroke, but she still can't speak. You see for yourself she's just wasting away. You know what? Screw you and your wife. When you weren't around, everything was fine in our family." Lisa spat out, got up and left. Seems like my plan failed, although I hoped for her understanding. Now I had to think of another plan. Plus, I remembered I still had an unfinished report, and it needed to be sent by evening. These events completely pushed it out of my mind. I went home to work, expecting yet another unpleasant conversation with my wife, as I was sure Lisa would tell her everything. However, when I arrived, Elsa didn't mention a word about it. Either Lisa kept silent, or Elsa decided to start another game with me. My wife only complained about how spoiled the boy she had to babysit was, and that he almost ruined her crafts. Trying not to show anything, I headed to my office and didn't come out until evening. While I was busy working, I had decided to install several cameras at home, and later, without my wife noticing, I installed an app on her phone that allowed me to track her location. I hoped that with these measures I'd be able to keep an eye on her. But the next 3 days passed without anything happening. I even drove to the city and stayed at the office just to catch these scoundrels, thinking they might be meeting in our house. But it was all in vain. I began to doubt myself, thinking maybe Elsa and Jack were truly innocent, and it was just my jealousy playing tricks on me. But most of all, I felt sorry for Lisa, who almost quarreled with her father because of me. I was about to abandon my surveillance plan and go back to living as before when Lisa called me. Her voice sounded slightly worried, and she asked for a meeting, saying it wasn't something to discuss over the phone. We met at the same cafe, and when she walked in, her face darker than the night, I knew something had happened. At first, I thought maybe something was wrong with her mother, but when I asked, she just shook her head. "Sam, Mom is still alive," Lisa began sadly. "But she's just lying there like a vegetable, not speaking or moving much. You know, after our conversation as I was driving to pick up my son, I kept thinking. I noticed that Dad's behavior is off. I tried talking to him, asking what's going on, but he's silent, doesn't tell me anything, insists that nothing has changed in him, but I can see. I hadn't asked her yet or interrupted her speech, but I understood she had changed her mind. Otherwise, why would she come to me just to lament?" I continued listening, sympathetically and questioningly looking at her. I called the doctor again to examine Mom, but he didn't give me any reassuring news, Lisa continued. I felt so sad when the doctor said that even if Mom survives, she might remain in this state. And to distract myself a bit, I decided to clean up. I busied myself by thoroughly tidying the house, every cabinet, every shelf, but that's not the point. In one of the drawers, I found some drops. At first, I didn't know what they were, especially since they weren't in the medicine cabinet, but in Dad's drawer. Then I decided to find out what those drops were, and it turned out to be medication, but in large quantities, it could be quite harmful. So I called Mom's doctor, and he confirmed that these drops could have caused a seizure in Mom. But the question also arose of who prescribed them to her and why she took them. Lisa fell silent, and I didn't rush to ask, although by now I had a lot of questions and I realized that my assumption, which I had decided to use for my own purposes, turned out to be true. But silence couldn't last forever, even though Lisa had started crying softly, trying not to show it and just wiping away the tears as they streamed from her eyes. And then, "Did you ask Dad about this? What did he say to you?" "Yes," I asked, "and he just yelled at me, said he knew nothing about it, and then he even told me to go home. But you were right. Mom didn't just fall ill. I managed to call the doctors, and they should be taking her to the hospital now. I just couldn't stay in that house. I left my son with the neighbor. Sam, will you help me figure this out?" No, it wasn't me, but Lisa asking for help. Naturally, I couldn't refuse the girl and decided to make every effort to assist her. But along with that, my feelings were now mixed. I had been angry with Jack before, and now knowing that he might have poisoned his wife, I wanted to extract all the filth from this villain. I immediately went to his house, asking Lisa not to come there for now. Jack was home, and I caught him before he left. I realized it later when I noticed a large suitcase in the house. When I rang his doorbell, he opened it, but when he saw me, he tried to close it immediately. I didn't let him in with a strong kick, knocked the door down, which pulled Jack along with it. As I entered the house, I launched in him, and now I could see fear in his eyes, not because I was going to beat him, but because his villainy was exposed. He started shouting at me, trying to claim that I ruined his life and turned his daughter against him. But that didn't stop me from grabbing him and hitting his audacious face. Though he tried to wriggle away and hit me back, my aggression prevailed, and soon I had him lying in the middle of the living room, right beside his suitcase. "Where are you off to?" I asked when he was already lying on the floor. "What the hell does it matter to you? On a business trip." I nudged the suitcase, which wasn't locked yet, and from it spilled not only clothes, but also some documents and a couple of bundles of money, indicating Jack's impending escape. Then, I stepped on Jack's throat and decided to conduct a little interrogation. "You son of a bitch! Tell me, what did your wife do to deserve you leaving your daughter without her mother?" I watched him writhing in pain, but slightly loosened my grip so he could respond. "What's it to you? Don't you have enough of your own problems?" he retorted, and then I pressed my hold again for a few seconds to make him understand I wouldn't let him go easily, and he continued. "She caught us. Me and your wife. Yes, you were right. We were seeing each other, but when you started poking your nose in, we decided to lay low so you wouldn't catch on. And when that witch caught us, she wanted a divorce, but I couldn't allow that. I'd lose everything. And so you decided to just kill her? No. I just wanted her to realize I'm not to be messed with, but now you can't prove anything. I destroyed the drops, and she's unlikely to recover." Jack even attempted a malicious smile. That's when I reached into my pocket and pulled out the phone with the recorder on, showing it to Jack. After that, his smile vanished abruptly, and he started cursing at me again. To silence him, I punched him in the jaw, rendering him senseless. That gave me the chance and time to call the police and tell them everything. The officer, after listening to me, said the recording might not be admissible in court as it was made illegally, but promised to do everything possible. All that was left was to pray that Jack's wife survived, and the doctors could restore her to normality as she was now the only witness. Jack was arrested and taken away. After that, I called Lisa and told her she could come back home. This turn of events didn't exactly please her, but she was relieved that her mom might be okay since the doctor had called and mentioned some chances. For me, there was only returning home and having yet another conversation with my wife, possibly the last one. It was bitter to learn that Elsa had indeed decided to entertain herself after so many years of our life together. We had a fierce argument again, and now she couldn't come up with excuses as Jack had confessed to everything. Elsa even admitted that their affair started several months ago, shortly after we moved, when she met him at the store and he helped her change a flat tire, and then she decided to mock me further, telling me how good he was in bed. That was the final straw for me, and I gave her a strong slap. Ultimately, I divorced Elsa. Despite the years together and the remnants of love I still held, I couldn't forgive her actions. She lived with our son for a while, but the daughter-in-law turned out to be a challenge, and Elsa moved out from them. As for Jack, I heard he was given a long sentence. Both Lisa and I were called to testify in court, and the prosecutor managed to get my recording attached to the case. Additionally, the forensic examination revealed traces of the substance Jack kept giving his wife to prevent her from recovering. Since then, I've been living alone. My son visits, and sometimes Lisa comes over. I was glad to help her, and I can also say that since then, I haven't been haunted by the old feeling of anxiety that helped me unravel the darkness within my own family. Plus, I've come to hate the smell of vanilla after all this. Second story. A few weeks back, I observed someone entering my house through the recently installed doorbell camera, but I couldn't spot them leaving. Interestingly, the next day, the footage had been erased. This made me curious, so I took on a role of a detective and started investigating. My soon-to-be ex-wife knew me well and noticed that I had grown suspicious of her behavior. She believed I had discovered some evidence, likely from the recently installed doorbell camera she had erased. I was in the process of installing in-home cameras and recording devices. However, she eventually confessed and admitted to an ongoing affair that had lasted about a year, almost the entire time I was away helping my elderly parent most of the week. She acknowledged that I deserved better and mentioned being fair in her divorce, agreeing to sell our house and split the proceeds. There's a possibility she may end up paying me alimony for some time or a lump sum. We'll divide most of the debt, and the house sale is likely to clear that, leaving a little for us to start over. It's really disappointing and feels like such an anticlimax. It's so unfair. I'll admit I let anger build up, and I wanted to get revenge somehow, but there's hardly anyone to expose or who would even care. I'm the affair partner's side. There's no one to expose either since he's single or well divorced, and he seemed to know more about the state of my marriage than I did. The relationship wasn't even close, and it's possible this wasn't her first time doing this, but I decided not to dwell on it and avoid seeking more hurt. This situation comes at a tough time for me since I'm dealing with elder care issues and just don't have the energy or desire to fight for anything right now. She offered to try and fix things, but we both know there's too much pain and damage between us. And she's known how broken I still am from being cheated on over 25 years ago, even before we got together. Someone's never truly healed. I've been questioning whether our whole relationship was just a rebound lately, but I'm someone who's dedicated, and once I commit, I'm all in. Maybe I did that too soon. Now I don't even believe in people or relationships being worth it. I can't see myself trusting anyone ever again. So here it is. No confrontation, no revenge, no exposing, and no reason left. Just too terrible. Emotionless lives torn apart. Now I have to figure out how to rebuild myself without my pride and ego. It's just another failure to add to the long list of them in my life. The life I knew was over, and I'm just going through the motions, handling things on autopilot. I don't even want to go home, but I have to pack and get the house ready to sell. Then I'll need to find an apartment, but I don't even know where I want to live. It's all just so lousy. I wasted more than half my life on someone. The road ahead seems like a void, and the only reason I get out of bed is to take care of my parent. At least not having kids is a blessing because once the divorce is done, I won't have to be in contact with her. But that will take time. Every time I hear her voice, it just brings back the pain again. My way of hurting myself is by looking back at all our pictures and reminiscing about the otherwise good times we had. I just don't understand why I'm so stuck in the past. Mourning, something I thought I was ready to leave anyway. I lie awake at night, analyzing everything I did wrong and feeling like I was never good enough for anyone. I question why I deserve to be treated poorly and why my life is so crappy. It feels like I'm always on the losing end. Now I'm old, broken, and feel undeserving of this crappy life. I have no hopes and dreams, just alone in my own thoughts. More thoughts from later last night. She hasn't even reached out to me since I left, even though I told her not to. I meant it, and I guess she knew that, but there hasn't been a single sorry or are you okay from her. Is she just sitting at home acting like it's just a regular Tuesday? Or maybe not. During the Christmas before last, we were discussing how we ended up with a dead bedroom. I mentioned that about 10 to 15 years ago, we went through many premature births from my VF. After that, I was scared of getting too close to her because I was terrified of accidentally getting her pregnant and going through that loss again. It led both of us to need mental health help, and we only got out of our deepest oppressions with support and luck. Now I know I made things worse. After she confessed to cheating for about a year, I said something really nasty, telling her she deserved to lose all of our kids because of the person she is. I'm considering sending her an apology text for that statement. But do you think that mentioning my fears from back then over a year ago made her flashback to that painful time and then let her cheat on me? I only ever told my therapist about my fears, and we discussed ways to overcome them. We decided it wasn't the right time to bring it up with my wife. Maybe she blames me for our years of intimacy issues. Maybe it's all my fault. Oh God, what have I done? After thinking about it, and probably against better judgment, I called her. I knew she probably wouldn't answer, so I left a voicemail apologizing for what I said. I admitted it was hurtful and not true. I'm sorry we ended up here, but I know it's over. Let's handle this like mature adults, not like the 20-somethings we were when we met. I told her I hope she finds what she needs and left it at that. Last night, my wife called me. She appreciated my apology and knew I said those things to her. We didn't talk much, just some apologies and blah, blah, blah. I mentioned I'll be coming home this weekend, but need her not to be there. It was mostly civil, but I made it clear I don't care where she goes. I even suggested she stayed with her boyfriend, since that's who she wanted anyway. Of course, she denied it and kept saying she wants me back and that we can work things out. She pleaded for one chance, saying she's never done anything like this before and will do anything to make it up. I have to admit, all I want is to go back in time to any moment from the past year where even the worst times in our lives instead of now. But this time I stood my ground and told her I don't see a way for us to be together now. A whole year has passed and I can't imagine feeling the same way for her. I only asked one question about it. She stayed silent for a while, but I didn't say anything. Finally, she asked if I really wanted to know because she didn't want to hurt me even more. I just said I need to know, and that's when she shattered me even more. She said it was only a few times in the beginning, but after about a month, it became almost every day I was away and even some weekends. For about 6 months, in the last few months, it was about once or twice a week when I was away. I felt sick, so I muted the call to let out some of the pain. She had intimacy within more times in a year than we've had in the past 10 to 15 years, maybe even more than in the beginning of our relationship. It was like hundreds of times. I wanted to ask more questions like if he was better, bigger, or what they did. I wanted to know what he did that I couldn't, but I couldn't bear it anymore. I just told her to go to him this weekend so I could be alone at home and sort through my important things. I don't even have a permanent place to take my things. I've been awake and got a bottle of good scotch. Now I have to work and take care of my parent while dealing with a hangover. So, as we had agreed, I went back to the house to gather some things. Thankfully, she's nowhere in sight. I'm collecting some documents I forgot last weekend, and then packing clothes and other stuff. It's all going faster than I expected. I've got my AirPods in, playing some good tunes to stay positive. I head to the basement and start packing up a few things from there. It's tough, but I'm determined to keep moving forward. Before I get too down, as I'm in the basement, I faintly hear the sound of water running in the pipes over the tunes. It goes on for a bit before I notice it. I walk upstairs and hear the shower going. I'm like, what the heck? I decide to make myself a cup of coffee and go out to my car. At first, I thought about driving away, but I end up just sitting in the driveway. I feel stunned by everything that's happening. I start writing along a nasty text, but then I decide not to send it as evidence of anything. So I just sit there and wait, hoping she'll leave again while I'm outside. My new neighbor walks by and introduces himself, seeing me standing outside having a smoke. I don't tell him anything, but I try to be friendly. Just as we're about to say goodbye, the garage door opens and she's standing behind her car asking to speak to me. I have to go through introductions with this new neighbor and my wife. We didn't really talk much, and even the new neighbor could feel the tension and left. Once inside, I was still in shock and just asked her why she was there. She explained that she couldn't check into her new place until later and was at the gym. That darn gym again. She wanted a shower and get some more things. She assumed I wouldn't mind and thought she could come and go without it being a problem. I just stood there wondering who the heck is this person in front of me. After a brief and awkward apology from her, she suggested we shouldn't be hasty while things are still raw. Maybe we should try more counseling, and she knows we still love each other. Blah, blah. I looked her in the eye and simply said, "No, please leave. I have things to do, and you agreed to stay away." I told her that this is what she caused and then went back to the basement. I'm sitting here now typing this and trying to control myself and my blood pressure. Thankfully, I just heard the garage door open and close, so she's gone. But I'm still a bit of a mess. I want to get back to packing, but my bourbon collection is staring me in the face. I'll admit I already had one good drink earlier. If I have another this early, today will be even more of a bust. All right, here's what happened. Sunday came after another night of no sleep, just packing and feeling so miserable. It was also tough going through memories, pictures, and things we chose together. Our wedding album and other stuff only stirred up more emotions I was trying hard to control, but I pushed through and focused on the things that meant the most to me. Unfortunately, one item hit me the hardest, the sealed urn with our children's ashes. We had planned that when one of us were both passed away, we'd mix our ashes and have a relative scatter them in the ocean by our favorite beach. Well, that plan's obviously off now. But here's the thing. I don't know if it's wrong that I want it with me. I mean, I know I have to talk about this with her eventually, but I have no idea how that'll go. I'm not sure if we can have it open and split the remains. That just feels wrong, like neither of us would have them. I don't even know if that's possible or a thing. I guess I'll ask my attorney once I hire one. At that point, I didn't mention it to her because my trust in her was below zero. Here's what's really going on now. Sunday evening, I'm almost done packing the stuff I'm taking with me for now. I wanted to have enough so that if I couldn't stand to come back for a few weeks, I'd be prepared. I picked some important keepsakes and documents, too. We had agreed she'd return after 9, and honestly, I didn't want to be there when she came. I resisted the urge to mess with electronics or the router, just to spite her. I felt like for once I was being the bigger person thanks to some supportive calls from a friend and messages here and there. So it's around 7 and I'm loading the last bits into my car. Guess what? No surprise here. She shows up, looks a bit shaken but nowhere near as bad as I felt inside. She starts talking about how it seemed like I was ready to leave again and if I could at least talk to her. I was already annoyed that she was there and I tried to be strong, but I knew it wasn't easy. I told her I didn't want to be too late, and I needed to get back in time to relieve the weekend help with my parent. I only had a few minutes, but if there's something important she can tell me, and if necessary, I can call her while driving. She said she understood and really wanted to talk about what happened this weekend without me getting angry. She claimed she spent the weekend alone, but I'm not sure if I believe that. She was thinking about everything that happened and what she did to us. She knew I couldn't forgive her, but she said she still loves me and will always be in love with me. She knows I don't believe her now, but she's angry with herself for hurting me so badly and destroying the man who loved her unconditionally and was always there for her. I was trying my best not to shout, "So be," hug her or anything, and just gave her a stoic look of indifference. I'll admit I failed. My eyes watered up, but I struggled not to let the tears fall. Yeah, I failed at that too. I didn't really say much, I just listened and hoped to leave after she said what she needed to. I listened to her saying many things and justifications, reasons why she thought she did this for so long, why she didn't stop herself, and why she thought I didn't care or was cheating on her. She thought I must have been cheating for so many years and that we had become like roommates. Despite everything, she still knew I was the only man she wanted to spend her life with. She wanted to confess to me many times, but she knew I would never be able to accept her back if she told me what she did. She kept insisting that it was all her fault and not mine. She said she'd seek counseling to understand why she did all this for so long. She felt our life together was ruined because she had everything she wanted and believed she could live without intimacy. She seemed to have accepted that. She even told me I could be with other people if I wanted, which sounded like typical cheater talk. But then she confirmed my suspicions. She brought up our conversation from the Christmas before last when she got really angry because I was afraid of being close to her, worried about getting her pregnant again. She thought I used IVF as an excuse and believed I never truly wanted her or a family, especially since I didn't want to adopt. She was upset, feeling that closeness and family were missing from her life, and she blamed me for keeping them from her. She was angry because she thought I blamed her for her child losses and lied about it. She felt I was disgusted by her for losing them and couldn't forgive her. However, she claimed she loved me enough for both of us all those years. When my parent got sick and was out of the hospital, she thought I was using it as an excuse to avoid her. All of a sudden it clicked in her head and she realized her worst fears were true. She just wanted to feel loved, but she believed I didn't love her and had been lying the whole time. The so-called gym guy was never even on a radar until all these issues arose. She had never even considered being unfaithful. At first, she wasn't even that emotional with him. She did it out of spite. But then she started missing intimacy and told them it was only about that. She had no intention of leaving me. She claimed she never really talked about me to him, but now I doubt that. Over time, she developed a connection with him and admitted feeling something she hadn't felt in years, though it was nothing compared to what we shared. Eventually, she confessed that it was over with him and hoped I could forgive her and talk to her about finding a way forward, even if we had to split. Now she asked if we could take some time before divorcing. She knows what she did was terrible, but she believes I had been dishonest about this for so many years and should give her the chance she deserved. Honestly, I couldn't hold back anymore and blurted out, "Do you seriously think you deserve a chance after a whole year of cheating?" I had shared my deepest fears in therapy, but I never wanted this kind of situation to happen, so I kept them hidden. I tried so hard in the past few years to connect with her, be romantic and engage, but she hardly acknowledged my efforts. I thought being vulnerable and sharing my deepest secret would bring us closer and show how much I cared, but instead, she used it to cheat and ruin my life. It shattered me, and thoughts of ending everything crossed my mind every day. She admitted she considered it too, but decided against it for my sake. I couldn't hold it in and yelled, "But you could do this to me for a whole year." After calming down, I told her I could never be open and vulnerable with her or anyone else again. She took my fears, weaknesses, and honesty and used them against me, and it changed me forever. I feared that this revelation was the reason for everything that happened afterward, considering the timing and all, according to her. But I still wasn't sure if I believed her when she said it was her first time doing something like this. I was already about 45 minutes later than I planned to leave. I knew I had to rush up the highway, but I wasn't in the right state of mind anyway. I left, promising to think more about what she said and call her if I had any questions or more to say. But while driving, all I could do was blast some loud music and cry in pain because my thoughts of causing this mess were confirmed. The ride was even more painful than the first one after D-Day. I ended up not calling her again. Now, in the clear light of day, I'm wondering if I caused all of this and if she could have seen my posts and used them against me. But to be honest, she's not much into social media, and I doubt she even uses Reddit. It was never on her phone, tablet, or in her App Store history. I can't believe I let my guard down with anyone and shared things I shouldn't have. If I had never opened up, maybe I wouldn't be in this mess. It feels like karma because I was thinking of leaving last fall anyway. Now I'm just going through the motions and a proof I should act like the happy guy and never let my guard down again. I feel like I ruined everything I had. I'm still consulting with my attorney and trying to figure out my path because I don't know how I can come back to her after all of this. The truth is, she just tore my heart open again and destroyed everything I was holding on to keep going. Text messages. Me, Helen, I hired a lawyer to handle our legal stuff. Let me know who they should contact. You should get legal advice for what you did. Helen, can we talk about this and figure out how to handle it? Please call me back. I'm sorry for how you must feel. I know I don't deserve a chance to talk before you make your decisions. Maybe we need some time for things to calm down. I know you probably think better of me than I deserve. I'd like to discuss counseling, but let's do it away from work emails. Can you text or call me? Me, I'll be busy with work and moving. Just wanted to let you know I'll use your personal email from now on. Thanks. Think about what I said. I hope you have someone to talk to. Helen, I understand you must feel alone. I know you always take care of others more than yourself. How's parents doing with the move? Tell them I love them too. I'm really sorry. Call me soon. Love. Me. I just realized by something. My parent is losing everything they own, their home of 50-plus years, and all the memories as they move to a facility. Can you imagine how a person with dementia feels being moved around like this? They have to be reminded every day because they forget. Then they have to go through the emotions all over again. I'm trying to handle it gently, but it's tough. We're figuring out what they really want to keep. After thinking about the conversation more, what really stuck with me was how she talked about not sending stuff to work. At first, I understood, keeping personal stuff separate from work email makes sense. But then I realized she must have used her work phone for this. Her personal phone was always pristine, and I even updated it for her when she got a new watch. Last Christmas, I guess I could still have overlooked something. It's been around a month since my last post about the mess my life and my WWE wayward wife have become. The situation has both improved and worsened at the same time. My wife of 25-plus years cheated on me for about a year while I was away taking care of my elderly parent most of the week. On the bright side, my parent has been in a care facility for a bit over a month now, and they seem to be adjusting pretty well. I visit them often, and they are generally happy to see me and still recognize me most of the time. I've also handled packing and selling all their stuff and hope to close the real estate deal this week. As for me, I found a better place to stay temporarily. I'm crashing at a friend's place who lives close to work. It's working out well for now, and I consider getting an apartment right away. But this arrangement is doing the job for the short term. Now let's talk about the rest of it. I did serve her with divorce papers, but her lawyer responded in a confrontational way. Recently, I had to deal with a maintenance issue at our old home. It wasn't too serious, but it needed quick attention. Luckily, she wasn't there when I arrived to handle it. I met with the contractor, fixed the problem, and hoped to be gone before she returned. It took a few hours, but I managed to move things around and get it done. But of course, my luck couldn't stay that good. Later that day, I got a call from a doctor saying she had been admitted to the hospital. I'm still her emergency contact and husband, so it wasn't a real surprise. Before I arrived, she had called an ambulance thinking she was having a heart attack. But it turned out to be a panic attack. However, she also mentioned having constant self-harming thoughts, so they admitted her for observation. She's been there ever since, and I had to call her boss to let them know she'd be out for medical reasons for a while. After talking to the doctor, I realized I needed to go and see her. The doctor said I could visit her since she requested it, but I had to be non-confrontational because she was in a delicate state. I was really confused because I didn't want to visit if it was just the usual cheater script BS, but I still care for her and don't want her to harm herself or struggle to take care of herself in the future. She had been in care for mental health in the past, along with another chronic health issue she's had her whole life. During those tough times, I was there for her 100% and did everything to help her get through it. Also, selfishly, I don't want it to affect our ability to handle our business together. I talked to my friend about it, and they said it's up to me whether I want to visit her or not. I also spoke with my attorney. After the first couple of visits, they advised me to be cautious, not make any promises or say anything that could be used against me, etc. I knew before visiting that cheaters often use attempts to end things as a way to manipulate. But considering her history, I'm aware that this could be a genuine and serious situation she's in. I know I shouldn't let anything related to her actions suck me in. I don't want to slow down my progress in moving on with my life, but there's a part of me that feels the need to be there for her. It's frustrating that I still have these feelings and wish none of this had happened. But it did. I've tried to be firm with her, but seeing her in such a state might cause setbacks. Now, before you jump on my case, I can't just abandon her. It's not in my nature. She really doesn't have anyone else. Her only close friend lives far away and is dealing with her own serious medical condition right now, so I told her doctor I'd visit her in the hospital and did that the next day. When I got there, she was a mess. I brought something she might need since it seemed like she'd be there for a few days. When I arrived, she was still sleeping within 4 and monitors, but they didn't seem related to mental health. I thought maybe it was dehydration or something, but seeing her sleep brought back memories of how beautiful and peaceful she looked, like the person I used to want. As I sat there watching her, all the anger and betrayal feelings came rushing back, but I kept it together. Eventually, she woke up and she was surprised to see me. She begged for a hug and forgiveness, but I told her I was there to make sure she was okay and that I was worried about her. I didn't want to talk about us. We managed to be civil about it all, but there were a lot of tears on her side. We talked for a long time. Then she dropped another bombshell on me, and it felt like my world was crumbling. During her visit to the gynecologist for STD tests and a checkup, they found something that was still being evaluated. I thought, here we go, she's caught an STD and I'm going to hear about it. But fortunately, it wasn't that. They found fairly aggressive ovarian cancer. Now, I'm no expert, but I know that type of cancer is usually serious. I had to step out of the room for a moment to collect myself. So many emotions were running through me, and I didn't want her to see that. After gathering myself, we talked for a long time. In our conversation, I eventually agreed to help her in any way I can. Part of me wanted to tell her to rely on her boyfriend now, but I made it clear that my decision had nothing to do with us being together. I felt that I would do the same for her if the situation were reversed, but who knows? It turns out her panic attack was triggered by getting this news, and also because I completely ignored her birthday. Plus, she got served with the divorce papers in the same week. It's like a perfect storm of crap hit her life. It almost feels like karma. She was feeling overwhelmed and thought ending her life would be easier than facing me and this disease alone. She was losing everything and now facing the prospect of losing her life on top of it. She didn't want me to suffer from her medical debts either. She thought her life insurance and giving me the house would give me a fresh start. But I managed to convince her that all I want is for her to fight with everything she's got, and I'll be there for her. I told her she is not a reason to end her life. So that's what I've been up to lately, driving up and down the highways for work, visiting my parent at the hospital, staying with my friend, and now going back to our old home to gather more of her things. They moved her to a regular room since the doctors think she's no longer a danger to herself. She's had more tests, and today we'll find out the exact stage of her cancer. From the initial exams, it's at least stage 2B or worse. If it's not stage 4, we might have a chance to handle it, I guess. But if it's stage 4, it'll be a tough and short road ahead. I'm currently typing this in the hospital cafeteria, waiting for the oncology department to give us more results and details. I'm the kind of person who'd do anything for anyone. Even though her actions drove me away, I'd be a complete mess. Not that I haven't been in private, but once again, I'm trying to be strong for both of us and staying optimistic, which is totally against my pessimistic nature. The biggest thing that might happen if it's not a lost cause is that she'll need major emergency surgery and chemo, and she'll require care and assistance during recovery. I agreed to be there for her through the surgery, chemo, and recovery if that's the best-case scenario. I haven't explicitly told her yet that I would move in and stay with her, although it's probably what I'll have to do. But that decision hasn't changed my mind about divorce. I talked to my lawyer about what all this means for our separation, and if we can still be considered separated during this time. They said we can treat this as an in-house separation as long as certain things don't happen, which would be impossible anyway. My other concern is how I can avoid being responsible for part of her medical debt from this situation, as it's likely to delay our divorce proceedings. They told me we can amend our supplement agreement, but she would need to agree that none of this is my liability. So the question is, can I take care of her through this, avoid getting emotionally connected again, and still move on with my life no matter how this situation comes to an end? I finally met with the doctors. It's stage 2B, and it is spread, but the tumors are still small and haven't reached the bladder or other distant organs like the liver, which is almost impossible to cure. She will undergo serious surgeries and chemo. I had already made up my mind that I would support her in her battle no matter what. I can't just leave her to face this alone without any support. I know some might say it's not my responsibility anymore, but I guess I can't be that cold-hearted person I initially thought I could be. And I don't care what others think. I'm doing this for myself. Despite supporting her through this, I will continue with our separation and divorce. Unfortunately, I likely have to move back and temporarily for in-house separation to help her for a while. I've discussed this with my attorney, and they understand my position. They say we can still consider it as separated time as long as we don't sleep together, which won't be a problem for various reasons. We also need to agree that she won't make the process more difficult, as it seemed to be her original plan. I'll make sure she understands that my support comes with the condition that she doesn't contest or drag out the process. I'll agree to give her time to get better situated. I might feel guilty, like I'm bargaining with her life, but everyone has their limits. She'll undergo surgery in the next few days for additional biopsies and a major operation. The treatment plan is aggressive, but it's better to stop the spread now. I don't need more details than that. As my post title says, her cheating may have saved her life, as she would likely have caught this too late otherwise. So I guess someone in this situation gets a win. I appreciate all the comments and advice. I know they come from a place of support, but ultimately the choices are mine to make. I just want this part of my life to happen and eventually end. After this, I can't keep feeling obligated to anyone besides my parent. Attachments only seem to bring pain, but I guess in the end, it's my fault for getting attached in the first place. I'll continue to monitor this account and might make updates, but for now, I guess this is the path I have to walk. I've been at the hospital with WWE since yesterday morning, and it's been really rough, just like everything else that's been happening. First of all, she's in a bad state. During surgery, she coded and they had to stop it because her blood pressure was uncontrollable, among other issues. The surgeon did remove a lot of the cancer, but not all of it. She'll need more surgery, but it's too risky right now. Last night, she even had a seizure that caused more damage and bleeding, so they had to take her back into surgery, even though it wasn't initially recommended to stop the internal bleeding. She came out of that surgery earlier this morning, but has been in and out of consciousness. The medical team is doing everything they can to prevent a stroke. I'm not sure if she'll make it, and I've been running on no sleep for 2 days, imagining the worst. She's a bit more stable now, but it's still a very delicate situation. Adding to the stress while waiting for her initial surgery, I used her work phone and saw a message from her affair partner a few weeks ago from an unknown number. I noticed she had blocked his other number, but I kept their conversation as evidence. In the message, he was asking how she wasn't apologizing for how he treated her the last time they saw each other. There's a whole story there that I don't want to go into, but basically I tracked down the guy involved and things got messy and dangerous. He contacted her and she agreed to meet him to avoid legal trouble. But it happened anyway. That was almost a month ago. I did see her response to him where she said he was the biggest mistake of her life. She regretted meeting him, and she wanted no further contact. She even asked him not to reach out for everyone's safety. I don't take this as significant since I found it myself, and she didn't admit anything to me, so I guess she still has her secrets. I managed to go through everything, including her work emails and personal accounts. I even looked back far before last year, and I found nothing suspicious before then. But it doesn't change my mind about the divorce or helping her. I'm just ranting because everything is messed up right now. She might live or die without ever knowing that I know this, and the only thing it proves to me is that she's still capable of lying to me. I don't even know if we'll ever get the chance to talk about it. I guess it doesn't really matter at this point. Anyway, I might be done with my posts now because nothing else really matters if she's not alive or has some brain damage or is in a worse state than expected. I'll still do whatever I can for her and hope for the best, but honestly, I tend to expect the worst. The best thing I can hope for is to get some actual sleep before the end of the week. Today, Helen's condition has been up and down, mostly down. They think she had a small stroke, but she's still hanging on and slightly improving. Over the weekend, while she's not out of the woods yet, doctors are a bit more optimistic. She's been conscious more, but in a lot of pain and on some strong meds. They moved her from intensive care, and she'll probably go into rehab before coming home on Thursday. Helen's best friend, Mia, got in touch with me. We hadn't talked since all of this happened. I figured she knew and was just on Helen's side no matter what. I left her a voicemail the night after Helen's first surgery in case they hadn't talked, letting her know Helen might not make it through. I said if she wanted to see her, she should come soon in case the worst happened. Mia and I were never super close, but they've been friends since their teens and went to college together. We've spent time together during holidays and a couple of vacations, so on Thursday, Mia called and expressed how sorry she was that we were going through all this and said she'd like to come see Helen. She asked if she could stay at the house. I assumed she maybe thought I was still living there. I told her she could stay and use Helen's car if needed. I've been at the house part-time, so it's not empty, but not every night, and it still hurts to stay in my own house. I agreed because she's always been a really good person, and I know losing her friend is weighing on her. Thursday evening, I picked her up from the airport, and we went straight to the hospital. On the way, we talked more about Helen's condition and what had happened since the surgery. She finally tells me she knows what happened with us, but she says Helen only told her everything a few days before she was initially hospitalized. When she got the news about the cancer and was served with the worst papers, she told me they hadn't talked much last year, not like before, but she thought it was because Helen was struggling. With the news about her own medical struggles, she wasn't good at handling the possibility of losing her best friend. The crazy part was that she had shared her suspicions with WW, not WOW, that her husband was cheating and how they were trying to work through it. She believed it was just an emotional affair and that he had a crush on someone at work, but didn't act on it. Eventually, he realized what he was risking and came back to her, according to her. I didn't say much about it except to advise her to verify everything he was saying. I hadn't seen anything about this in Helen text conversations, but since we're all over 50, we're probably more phone call people than texters, so it kind of makes sense. The absolute irony and slap in the face for both of us was that she was advising WW on how to approach her husband about it and handle their marriage counseling. She was helping her set boundaries and demand the respect she deserved, etc. Mia told me how they argued a lot when she confronted Helen about everything. She wasn't sure if they could still be friends after discovering how deceitful Helen had been to both of us. Mia even admitted to cursing her out and saying she deserved whatever consequences she faced in the divorce. It's surprising because Mia is not the type to use foul language. She's pretty religious and proper. After the argument, WW tried calling me a few times, but Mia ignored the calls. That's also why she didn't answer my call initially when I reached out to her. She thought I might be trying to involve her more in the situation. However, when Mia heard my voicemail, she realized that she couldn't stay away without seeing Helen again just in case the worst happened, and she didn't want their last words to be during a heated argument. So she called me to arrange a visit to the hospital. We spent a lot of time together this weekend, but don't worry, it wasn't in any wrong way. Mia shared some more insights with me after her visits with WW. We talked almost every night until very late, and it was kind of nice because she never pressured me to stay together. But I could tell that after each visit, she was becoming more understanding. Last night, Mia surprised me by telling me something unexpected. Helen had asked her to talk to me about DNR, do not resuscitate, and what to do with her condition worsened. WW wasn't sure if things got worse if I could take her off life support. She also expressed that if her condition deteriorated to a point of unbearable suffering or major disabilities, she wanted to end her life. WW asked Mia to convince me to let her go if the time came and I reached out about it, or if Mia couldn't handle the outcome. I'm not even sure what circumstances other than being brain dead would be legally allowed for that. Here tonight, I'm going to talk to her about this whole situation, but honestly, I'm not sure what to say. I'm the type of person who believes in not prolonging someone's suffering, and I'd probably make the right decision in the right circumstances. But I can't commit to anything more than that, and I'll never be certain if I'm doing it just to be done with all this pain or not, even in the right medical scenario. I think I'd carry a ton of guilt about this forever. I'll also discuss this with my therapist, but my appointment isn't until later in the week. Before she left, I asked her friend Mia if she would consider being the medical POA, power of attorney for my wife, and she's thinking about it. I'll also ask a close relative, even though they live far away, but I can't guarantee they'll do it. I won't make any decisions except legal ones. I briefly spoke with my lawyer, and we have a meeting scheduled for tomorrow. However, tonight I'll let her know that I understand what she wants, but I can't agree to it right now.